All right. Welcome to the SOL podcast. I am your host, Drew Baker, this Shake and Bake. I'm joined by Mr. Matthew Dixon, the Iron Man. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing great, Drew. Got a lot going on for this Friday's episode.
Yeah, a lot going on there, a lot going on in the next month. We're going to be sending out a newsletter that tells everybody who our guests are going to be. Got some exciting guests. We have Kelsey with us again today, our co-host, who still has not made it to the intro. Sorry, Kelsey.
Sorry, what's up, everybody? Glad to be back.
It is exciting to be back, and we are in the process of trying to use OBS Studio, which may or may not mean anything to anybody else. It's a great studio program. It should give us 2 cameras. We played with the audio for a while today. If you're lucky enough to catch one of our live accidental YouTube performances live, we didn't know what was going on, but it was on. Hopefully you enjoyed it, because we definitely realized that after the fact we were getting some funny text about, hey, are you guys like doing a show, or are you over there?
Well, we sort of knew it was on, but we didn't really think other people would be watching it. But
Yeah.
they have subscriptions, and thank goodness, it's a benefit for us. They've hit that notifications button, so every time we do go live, they'll get a notification on their subscription.
We just need to be probably more aware of that. But
yes.
Fortunately, I don't think anything was done or said that was inappropriate. So
At
that's
least
good.
not too inappropriate.
Right. Kelsey, I know that you've been hot and heavy in the news, digging in deep like always. And we've decided to kind of take a lot of different topics today and crush them into one and call it Catching Up Friday, because we got a lot to talk about. This isn't really going to have a great outline in terms of any type of legal thing today, as much as it is just kind of a laugh or two about what's going on with the news. As we get into April, we're going to have some episodes that I think will be much deeper and much more involved in terms of both a psychological standpoint, some of the mental health issues that are going on that even could be related to the law, related to politics. And we've got a special guest for that. We also have a guest that's coming on to talk to us a little bit about employment law, Matt. Is that right?
Yes.
Morgan McMasters?
Yeah, Morgan McMasters will be joining us from Albeit Weicker.
That's right.
Yes, she'll be joining us to have a discussion about right to work.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions lately about what do I do if I'm asked to do certain things specifically related as of late to the coronavirus. Like, do I need to get a vaccine? If I don't get a vaccine, can I be fired? All of those types of things. We're going to have Morgan McMasters on, an employment law expert, to give us some guidance in terms of what the answers to those questions are, since that's not Matt and I's area. And Kelsey's going to be there to just drill her with tons of questions, right, Kelsey?
I have a lot of questions on that topic.
You have a lot of questions in general, I think.
That's true.
I believe that's true. All right. I think I just lost my ears on that. But anyway, just to remind everyone, we're on YouTube Live right now. We're going to eventually be on both YouTube Live and Facebook Live, depending on what your preference is. By the next show, you can choose whichever one you like. And then we have Spotify, iHeartRadio, of course, Buzzsprout, and iTunes. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to chime in. Unfortunately, the studio line is not up today because this is kind of an on-the-fly. But I promise you the studio line will be more than available for your questions when Miss McMasters is here, as well as when we have Stephen Carr, the writer of the book Power Beliefs, to talk to us a little bit about his belief system and limiting beliefs. All right. Did I cover all the intro?
I think so.
All right.
You got it?
I think that's everything.
Well, let's dive into the first topic today. Kelsey, why don't you start us off?
Well, we're going to revisit the Mike DeWine mandates. So
Yes.
Actually, I think this one is when Matt is supposed to take over.
Yes.
Here for this one.
Yes. I am definitely going to hit this one. So the Ohio legislature looked at passing the Pandemic Authority Bill, which essentially would limit the governor's or any health director's ability to issue certain kinds of health directives during a pandemic. And, of course, as we all know, DeWine had vetoed the bill that did pass through the Ohio House and Senate. And as it turns out, the Ohio House and Senate actually overrode the governor's veto, which is the first time. I think there have been 4 vetoes from Governor DeWine since 2019. This is the first one that's been overturned. It was done mostly along party lines. There was one Senate House member, a Republican Senate House member, that voted with Democrats against the veto. overriding the veto, sorry, and 2 House Republicans that voted, excuse me, with Democrats to override the veto. Otherwise, it was pretty much along party lines. So there were a lot of things that this bill did to override the governor's capabilities to issue orders during a pandemic. And I am
Well, let me back up to it just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page here. So my understanding of this was that at least members of Congress, this is at the state level, decided, or the legislature at the state level decided that they felt DeWine had too much power during the pandemic in terms of making certain orders, right? I mean, that's what this was all about.
Correct.
Obviously, we've joked around Caesar DeWine and made other comments such as that: when you're going through hell,
keep on
keep on going. But with those types of powers, the governor was allowed to keep us at home for an extended period of time. Obviously, we're still under restrictions as of today in terms of a mask mandate and some other things. So I believe my understanding is the legislature wanted to, or portion of the legislature, sponsor of the bill, wanted to take that power away from DeWine and put it in the hands of essentially the people, the legislatures, the House of Representatives and the Senate, those that we elect, to make those decisions and not have it be so unilateral to the governor who is seeking the advice maybe of the Amy Actons of the world, or something along those lines. More so,
sure. Unelected officials.
Yeah, put it in the hands of people that are supposed to represent us as citizens, right?
Yeah, I think that's the idea. And essentially, it targeted the authority of the governor and the Ohio Department of Health and local health departments to respond to these public health crises. So, yeah, I mean, arguably the governor is elected by the people as well, but having the state legislators individually be able to, vote on these types of issues does help spread out.
Well, what it does is it takes the demographics of the country, or the state rather, and we're seeing a real global picture of those demographics represented, not just the governor who sits in Columbus, and I think a lot of people are very irritated by the fact that they didn't have a voice. And I mean, how many times did we hear, guys, that you'd hear like a radio program or something and the governor would be talking, in particular like a Bill Cunningham, and he's telling us like things that we're going to have to do. And if we don't, we're not going to be able to do other things, almost being talked down to. And I felt like other groups of people, like the Restaurants Association, for example, that went to him and said, hey, we need to be open, we can be safe. It was like going to the king and asking for, permission, which is very odd, I think, in our country. And I think the goal of this bill was don't go to the king, go to the Congress or legislature so that you get a more even shake at it.
Well, it's not only that, but if you remember this, go back to March of 2020, okay? Our stay-at-home order, 15 days to stop the spread. So we're now 370 days into 15 days to stop the spread, right? So a part of this was, let's limit these orders. Let's also limit the length of time in which they can take effect. And let's put into place a way in which the governor can extend those orders if need be. But, you can have an emergency where the governor can do something.
Yeah, I think you got, 14 days? Is that, I don't know what the law says. There is a shortened period of time. But one of the things, Kelsey, I think you had this discussion at some point, how does it make sense to give anyone power to keep a healthy person at home? It makes sense that you don't want a sick person to go out into the world and infect a bunch of people. I think we all knew that a long time ago. We don't go to work when we're sick. We don't send some people do. But we shouldn't send our kids to school when they're sick. But this was a complete, we're going to pretend as if we don't know that. We're going to keep healthy people that should be working or could be working, that want to be working, at home. And I don't know that, when you spread that out among a lot of legislatures from a lot of different places in Ohio, my guess is you're going to have parts of Ohio that has people that have told their congressperson, I don't want to sit at home. I want to work. And you need to go out there and fight for me under this, power that you have as a legislature. Your one vote means something in terms of getting this turned around.
And you can, it's much easier for those members to get the voice of their local community and represent that at the state level versus one governor trying to provide for that across the entire state, right?
Yeah.
So you have pockets of where things are happening.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
those individual legislators can, bring to the forefront their constituents' concerns.
yeah, I thought it was great. I'm excited about it that the Congress. I had some doubt that it would actually make its way through because of some of the other failed attempts, but maybe people were just to the point, especially.
I think they're fed up.
They're fed up. The legislature probably said, "Hey, I've had enough." What do you think, Kelsey? We're yapping too much here. Go ahead.
I'm super happy that it worked out that way. But my question is, once this takes effect, which I think you guys said was like 90 days, right?
Yeah, it should
The
be
law
90
will take
days
effect in
from
90 days from when the override vote
Passed.
took place
So
2
do
days
the
ago.
existing mandates that DeWine has already said,
Yes.
do they expire in 90 days and then we have to go to the legislator if they want to put the new mandates back in? Or will DeWine's mandates stay out there until the legislature overrides them?
I don't know. I don't know if the bill had any grandfathering type language in it that would keep the governor's mandates that were previously, imposed in force. My guess would be if that language is not in the bill, then there are no more mandates. And then at that point, and again, I'm not saying I know this for sure because I don't know if that language is in the bill, but if that language grandfathering those orders in does not appear in the bill, then I would guess that the legislature would have to go through the normal process of introducing a bill, putting it in front of the House, in front of the Senate, to then make a decision and vote on that particular bill to impose the mandate. I guess if it got that far, we would know that DeWine wouldn't be vetoing that, right? I mean, he obviously would be signing it based on everything else he's done thus far. But either way, I just think it's nothing against the governor. It's just a nice way of spreading out the decision as to whether that's the best for the whole, the best for the people. Whereas when it's unilateral, he may have the best intentions, but how do you represent that many people in our state in terms of what they want?
Well, so under the law, it limits the new law would limit state of emergency declarations to 30 days and require legislature approval to extend it. So arguably, whether it expired or not, when the new law came into effect, Caesar DeWine could, implement that on day one for at least 30 days.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, it could be rescinded by under this bill. It could also be rescinded as early as that day.
Yeah. Right.
By the state legislature. But he could issue a new order, and it would have 30 days of effect unless rescinded. And then after that, he would have to go back to the legislature to extend
whatever order was there.
Past 30 days.
I am Caesar DeWine. Thank you. I'm here to extend the bill.
Keep on going.
Well, let's hope that it doesn't get extended. I think everybody's a little bit done, as you pointed out earlier. All right, what's topic number 2 for Catch Up Friday?
Back to the very first topic that I ever talked to you guys about on my first episode, and that is the defamation lawsuits with.
Oh yeah, we promised we would update. That was noisy. Sorry. We promised we would update on that, so we got to make sure we do it. If you go back to, it's season 3. I don't recall the episode number, but
it was called "You Can't Say That."
Yeah, you can't say that. It's a great episode if you want to know what defamation is, how it works, what maybe risk you run by defaming another person, what needs to be proved. But the focus, as I recall, Kelsey, was that podcast was about well, you guys made fun of me earlier
defamation lawsuits against Giuliani and Sidney Powell.
Yeah, and how whether or not they would be successful based on what we knew at the time, which, a little bit of a different story as the media's put out as of late. I don't know how accurate that is. You're going to help us with that. So, yeah, what's going on with that?
So the headlines, I'm going to read a couple of them off to you here. Sidney Powell admits it was all a lie. Sidney Powell's lawyers argue no reasonable person would have accepted her stolen election claims as fact.
My.
So,
sounds damning.
Because they're outrageous and outlandish. But those are what the headlines say, which makes it appear that Sidney Powell, now that she's being sued for defamation, is coming out and saying, nobody would have believed me. I just made that all up. But if you go and actually read the articles, and even better, read what her legal briefing that she filed in response actually says, that's not the argument that she is making at all. What she's saying here is, and we talked about this in that defamation podcast, where if you have the reasonable belief that what you are saying is true, it does not count as defamation. So she is saying they should dismiss the defamation lawsuit because she had reasonable belief that this was true based off sworn affidavits. And
She had hundreds of affidavits from people who
said that they
had
witnessed
things,
yeah.
heard things, had documents, whatever it may be.
so the headlines are being intentionally misleading about what her legal argument is.
What?
You have
That is
Headlines are being
shocking.
intentionally misleading?
I am
I never
shocked by
thought-
all of
Never.
this.
I can't believe it either. But yes, like the American Bar Association Journal, they cited BuzzFeed News as their source.
That's very credible.
Just like
That
clickbait.
is
Extremely
that is
credible.
incredible.
You're the American Bar Association. Why would
Yikes.
you not just cite her actual legal brief and
Yeah,
report
that
the
is-
facts of what
that-
she's saying?
I'm going
instead
to
of
issue an
BuzzFeed?
opinion about an opinion
Yeah.
that's based
Yeah.
on facts that I'm not sure what they are.
Well, one thing that's interesting to me is it goes back to what we talked about during that episode, that when you are, putting out the information, that information has to be false, that falsity element. And the question is, should she have believed that these sources that she was getting her information from, I guess, were somehow, not good sources? Or should she have said, I have a reasonable belief that what is appearing in these affidavits, as they are under oath, are true? If that's the case, and a court was to look at that and say, affidavits are considered, number one, evidence that are self-authenticating, and you can bring them in as evidence in a trial because, again, it's an under oath statement. Will that be enough to be a defense for her to where she's not found to have defamed the Dominion Server Company and they won't recover any damages? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a really slippery slope, I think. If it goes to a jury, a lot of what could come of that would probably depend on who's on the jury, I think, because it obviously is in a lot of ways, it's a heavily political situation.
What are the backstories to these affidavits?
Yeah, how did they get
these
them?
Insiders? Are
Right.
these well-known right-leaning? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there some bias that should have been known or understood by Powell and or Giuliani or whoever was collecting these affidavits? Should they have known that they might not have been true?
I think she's an idiot. I really do. I think that I would have not gone out there and said as much as she said, only to find out later that was bad evidence. I mean, she took a stance on a number of press conferences as well as other programs saying that I have the evidence. This is the evidence and this is going to happen. Whether she believed it or not, I mean, there's going to be people that say it was a publicity stunt so she could get more and more recognition. However, as a lawyer,
No, it's bad evidence. It hasn't gone to court where they've had the ability to cross-examine.
I was about
and
to ask that
ask
question. Any of the articles you read, have they mentioned why these affidavits may or may not be accurate?
No, they just say that they're false, which they're not. They're unproven because they've never gone to court to have that ability to cross-examine and test the validity of it.
I agree with that. I just think that the problem is, as an attorney, when you present evidence and you do it in such a public forum and you say, I have the evidence for this, you do put yourself out there a little bit. And maybe that's why, do you remember how she recanted, like to some extent, or just kind of she disappeared off the map and then she was no longer part of the Trump team. And that all happened over a weekend. I remember she was on the Glenn Beck program on a Friday. And then on Monday, she had withdrawn from Trump's legal team. So I don't know if that was because maybe she thought more about it, looked into it, and said, geez, you know what? A lot of this stuff isn't as accurate as I thought it was. I'm out of here. Maybe. But that may have worked to her advantage. But I just think that she may have been a little premature in terms of introducing all of that in the manner in which she did in that public forum because it put her at risk. Maybe her career
But
at
she
risk.
is still saying, though, that she's not taking back anything that she said. She is not saying that she thinks it's false or she doesn't believe it anymore. She's saying she still believes everything that she said. It just has not gone through the court process yet.
Yeah, no, and none of us can damn her for it because we don't know
Well, I think
how it comes out.
part of this was timing, right? Like maybe she shouldn't have come out to talk about these things, but at the same time, the case she was presenting was extremely time sensitive.
No, it was
And
limited.
yes,
Yeah,
and
big
without
time.
being able to, bring it to the forefront with the public and with, our political allies. If people aren't hearing that this could be a problem or these facts could be true, then no one's going to know about it, and timing, things would just go by without anything happening.
Did you see anything in there about Giuliani, or is it
his case and the My Pillow guy is coming up later this month? So
yeah, I remember the My Pillow guy. Yeah, I like My Pillow. I have one of those.
But
I sleep very nicely on that.
I have two, and like one of them is okay. I think the other one.
You understand? You have to put it in the dryer and like revive it because it gets too bunched up, and then it feels like you're sleeping on some rocks. But if you put it back in, yeah.
So you're supposed to fluff it.
But I will say the news
fluff
is
in the dryer.
In the dryer. Yes, thank you.
Gross.
You. Oh boy.
I do know what that means.
Oh man. So anyway.
But I just will say the news is being intentionally, or in my opinion, intentionally, but they're definitely being misleading about what her legal brief is saying, which leads me to give her a little more benefit of the doubt because they are completely mischaracterizing what her legal defense is.
Watch it. You'd be sued for defamation.
Yeah, you better be careful. She might be on you next as far as the defamation train. I think she's already pretty deep in it right now. She better be careful.
Yeah.
I do wonder if like her career's over though. I feel not bad for her. I just think should have probably. I don't know. It's a tough one, Matt. Like you said, there was a limited time when you have 2-3 weeks to do something.
She was zealously.
That was the problem. She was very zealous. Almost. Yeah. There is a point to which you can be too zealous to the extent that it's to the detriment of your client because you're giving your client some false hope that there's going to be a better outcome than what ultimately is there. So something to think about, but definitely we'll keep an eye on it. Let's keep watching this and see what unfolds.
That
because
and the other two cases for sure.
Yeah. I don't know much about the My Pillow case. What was that?
I know I didn't watch it, but he produced a video that I think I heard was about 2 hours long where he goes through all the evidence of election fraud. And the people that I know that have watched it have said that he makes his case beyond a reasonable doubt. I haven't watched it myself to know if I agree with that assessment, but so he got slapped with a defamation lawsuit.
Interesting.
As well.
Just be like the Bar Association and take somebody else's word for it.
Right.
You don't think that you don't think that had anything to do with the fact that he might have money, do you? Because I don't think that all the other YouTubers and videos I watched that talked about the same things, I'm probably guessing they're not being sued.
Well, they didn't do it on the stage that he did it either,
I know,
he did go from crackhead to CEO.
Yeah, his story is very interesting. I'd like to have him on the podcast sometime talking about that. But all right, what else we got? Guns. Lots of guns. I like my guns personally. Those who know me know I'm a advocate of the Second Amendment. In fact, wrote my law school thesis on the Second Amendment. Well, we've got some bad gun things that happen, obviously, by a person who appears to have been a combination of mentally deranged and certainly not a person that should have had a gun. I think we can all agree with that. But the question is, what's coming up next? Are we headed towards an executive order where somehow we're going to have the guns taken away from the law-abiding citizens of America in violation of the Second Amendment? Or is Congress going to act? Because as Ms. Harris said, Vice President Harris said, for those of you that don't know, if it's an order, it's an order. If it's something that Congress enacts, it will be long-standing, essentially. She seemed to be more of a fan of the legislative route so that it would never go away once it was passed. But I don't know. What do you guys think is going to happen?
Oh, I think they're definitely going to make a push for more gun control, gun grab. But we'll just see how successful it is. I don't know.
Yeah, Drew, I like the statement you made, and I'll let you make it about the Sheriff's Association.
Yeah, I heard in another program, which I thought was interesting. They had a sheriff on who was down in southern Ohio and made mention to the fact that if the federal government imposes these restrictions on guns, and it's a federal law, obviously the state is subject to the federal laws, but there's also state laws that may, end up being in some sort of contradicted way with that federal law, and which rule of law will be applied in a legal setting is something for the courts to sort out. But the sheriff essentially said that we're actually interested in more people having guns, not less. And by that, obviously, he meant law-abiding citizens that can legally possess firearms. He was an advocate of that and more concealed carry holders because he said, look, guys, it's it's as easy as this. We only have so many people, and there's only X amount of time. And in most cases, our people, if we have them available, have a hard time getting there at all. And if they can get there, is it going to be in enough time? Whereas if you have a concealed carry holder, obviously it's trained in those situations. You do have a class. I've gone through it. And most concealed carry holders I know still shoot on a regular basis. It's not like a class you do once and then never shoot a gun again for 30 years until you had to. So I'm more comfortable with that, knowing that possibly in a grocery store or a Walmart or someplace, if someone walked in with a firearm, I would feel more comfortable knowing there are numerous people in that store that know how to operate a firearm, have a firearm, and I don't have to wait for the cops to show up for them to potentially take care of the problem so that, more and more people die. I mean, what do you do? Hide behind a box of Cheetos? I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about that mindset.
Bad guys will always find a way to be bad, right? They'll always find a way to cause harm to somebody.
Yes.
And restricting a lawful gun owner's right to protect themselves or their property is just wrong.
And people who are going to commit mass shootings or commit crimes with their firearm obviously don't care about the law anyways. So imposing new gun control laws is
this is like the age-old argument, but it makes so much sense. But some people that I talk to, who I greatly respect, will tell me that I'm wrong about that and that laws will make a difference. And I just can't wrap my head around how that's possible.
We have hundreds of gun laws on the books today.
Yeah. I mean, background checks have never been something that was a bad idea, right? I don't have a problem with a background check. I think that for everyone's safety, you're buying a gun. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's okay to make sure that the person buying them doesn't have a history of mental health problems. That's something that isn't a terrible... If you're going to go anywhere with this gun regulation, but maybe we focus on, the mental health side of things to make sure that people that have some of these afflictions aren't buying the firearms legally. That may help. It might not.
But those laws are already in place. So just enforce the laws that are already on the books instead of constantly trying to put new restrictions like red flag laws in there, which I could basically just call up and say, hey, I think Drew's a psycho.
Yeah, that's terrible.
You get your gun taken away.
That is one of the worst ideas I've heard yet, because for anybody that operates in a legal setting as an attorney or works in a law office that's ever dealt with a domestic case knows there's a pretty good chance that those two people that are in the process of a divorce don't like each other. That's why they're getting divorced. Some people take that to the other end of the spectrum and do enough and hate enough that it's a call to get my spouse, or going to be ex-spouse, in trouble. That's an easy one. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes kids are used in that regard.
Oh yeah, people can be very vindictive.
Yeah, so now we're going to start using guns too to get people to lose their guns because an angry husband or angry ex-wife, one of the two, is accusing the other of something, and then only just for spite. Nothing more. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, because then how do you get it back once you've been accused and they've taken your guns as part of a red flag law? What recourse do you have to prove that person was just being vindictive?
I still go crazy about how people mischaracterize firearms, what they are, what
do you
kinds
mean?
Well, AR stands for assault rifle, right?
There it is.
Whoa.
Oh man, that was an assault rifle. It had to be. Even though I'm pretty sure that was a machine gun and I can't buy one. Yeah. And I've got a clean record.
There's just a difference between, what's scary looking and what's not scary looking. I get it when somebody says you shouldn't have a 30-round magazine. Well, I know plenty of people that are trained well enough that 3 10-round magazines can go just as quick as a 30-round magazine.
You're splitting hairs at that point.
The Second Amendment only applies to muskets, is what I heard. That it's just the weapons that were available at the time. I am a hell
of a shot with a musket. You ought to see me with a musket. I am just nasty.
Is all that applies to.
You should see Matt with one of those. Cannon? Matt, didn't you used to have one of those cowboys where you hit the back of the trigger, little 6-shooters?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
pea shooters.
Yeah, but a musket is actually really convenient to carry too. When you think about it, like you said, I've got a concealed carry musket holster right in my back. You guys can't see it right now, but it's very comfortable. Occasionally, if I lean this way, it hurts a little bit, like right in the middle. But I mean, not to mention, you ought to see me reload that thing. My stick that I have to.
The looks I get when I'm rolling a cannon down the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to protect myself.
You're not lying. That's
Yeah.
always, yep. You always get a lot of people that are like, what is that guy doing?
Then
Well-
the other argument that I hear a lot of people make about is that, well, the government, if you think that you have guns so you can rebel against the government if they take too much power, the government has nukes and they can just bomb us anyways. And that is the most insane counterargument that I've ever heard. Like, why would you trust a government that's threatening to nuke its own people if you don't do what they say? Does that not make you want to have a gun to fight back against them more?
It does, but there is this fear that I have that the guns that we do possess are, micro machines compared to whatever
Yes.
the government actually has and what we know they have. And what we don't know they have is a lot scarier than what we do.
But that Eric Fartwell, who was like banging Fang Fang or whatever, the guy from California.
Did you say Eric Fartwell?
Yeah, said he farted on Chris Matthews' show that one time.
Excuse me.
He's the one that said, like, oh, we'll just nuke you. If you don't want to give us your guns, we'll just nuke you. And I'm like, that's exactly why people should want to have them, is because now people are starting to say stuff like that. I understand they could overpower us if it came down to that, but if they nuke half the country, who's going to pay their salaries? Like, they need us for tax purposes. So I don't think they really mean that they're just going to come drop a nuke on people if we don't comply. But the fact that they are threatening to do that,
Maybe not a
does scare
nuke,
me.
but it could be a trouser trumpet. All right.
So childish.
I need to grow up for sure. All right. Well, let's move on to something else. This is our last topic of the day. And I'm going to start off by saying what I said in the Facebook post. The press conference by Joe Biden yesterday was not something we're going to pick on that a little right now, but I have to say, in seriousness, I just thought it was elder abuse. When I watch somebody struggle that much to formulate a thought and to speak, and has the look of, I had a grandmother who suffered from dementia. It was very sad. And at one point in her ailment, she had 5 questions that she would ask me and then start over, and the same 5 questions over and over and over. And the look in my grandma's eyes went from, I'm ever aware of my surroundings, to I'm in outer space. And I see that same look when you really study Biden and study his eyes and study his mannerisms, how he tries to recover from certain trains of thought. It's really sad. And I just almost to the point where yesterday I felt like guilty watching it. Like I was watching it almost in my head laughing, but thinking, you shouldn't be laughing. This isn't funny. Like, you're making fun of someone. I don't know. That was my thought on it. It was that kind of a.
I understand what you're saying, and the thing that stops me from having sympathy is that Dr. Jill Biden does it. I'm not going to care about Joe more than Dr. Jill cares about Joe. So if she's willing to let her husband sit up there and make a fool of himself, why should I care?
Yeah, it's just tough because I do think that, and perhaps this is because he always wanted to be in this position, and maybe his wife is saying, I support you because I know you always wanted to actually get to the presidency. You've been in office 120 plus years.
Oh my God! But another
It
thing,
could have
on
been
his
from
numbers.
that, right?
another thing that you said though in that same post, aside from the dementia issues, the elder abuse issues, is how does this make the United States look
Oh my God, it's
to
scary.
other countries? I mean, we are one of the remaining superpowers of the world.
Exactly.
We're supposed to keep peace in so many places, but we have such what appears to be a feeble-minded
Yeah,
person who's quote unquote running our country.
yeah.
Well-
If you were watching that from the outside in, and you're thinking maybe you're in another country, Russia or China, I just think you have to look at us and say, boy, it's pretty messed up over there. They got a leader that can't really complete a sentence. There's all these other areas of unrest in the country. There's a lot of divisiveness. All that is bad for us.
Now's the
Especially-
perfect time to strike.
Exactly.
In whatever way, whether that's militarily
Maybe
or
through
technologically.
with all of the the black web and the dark web and all that. I mean, who knows? They're going to come and shut down our power grids. Who knows? It's a scary thought. I just think we always need to not be the type of, we don't need a leader that stands up and necessarily is a bully about everything to where we're not liked, but you certainly need a leader that's in a position of power. Just comes across
exudes
as
power, and authority.
Just comes across as sharp, and don't mess with us. You know, we're good. We're good people. We don't want to hurt anybody. We're good people, but don't mess with us because there's going to be serious consequences. It's hard to take him serious.
I think they're just going to think that Joe Biden's a really nice guy.
Well,
because he said it.
He said it
times,
a lot
so.
yesterday. There's no doubt that he's very confident in his niceness.
Yes,
He's developed that over 120 years in the Senate.
That's right.
true.
I mean, it takes at least 120 years to be that nice. But it was, I mean, there were parts of this that just didn't even really seem real. Like you almost wondered, I mean, the notes, remember like when have you ever seen a president? I know that they all probably have notes.
I've never seen
on the
one
podium.
where they have a picture of the journalist's face of who they're supposed to call on, though. And he did have a little array there with where everybody, who they worked for and what their face looks like and what questions they were going to ask. So,
Yeah.
Never seen that before.
I mean, as a
but it's
senator,
the most transparent administration ever.
as a longtime sitting senator and a vice president of the United States for 8 years, you'd think he'd know these reporters. You'd think he'd been asked questions before and provided coherent answers, which he has. So what's changed?
I don't know. And even getting back to the whole, we're going to be very transparent in our administration. That was always something that he ran on and even kind of touched on at some point yesterday. We're a transparent administration compared to the Trump administration. What was interesting to me is they are not allowing journalists to actually go down to the border, take photographs of what's really going on. To me, that is a just absolutely ridiculous that we can't get our people down there. I mean, reporters are supposed to be reporting what is happening in the country. There's should not really be any kind of way to keep them from doing that, especially with photographs and this type of challenge. I won't call it a crisis with the immigration challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And if it makes me wonder, because the press has obviously always leaned to the left, how bad is it? Like, right? I mean, if you know the press generally tends to lean your way, and you're still keeping the press from going in and taking the photographs,
Right.
how freaking bad is it there? It's scary to me.
Well, and as we talked about earlier, they're not even challenging him on it.
That's
They're
what
not
bothers me.
even challenging, they're not asking the questions. They're not pushing for answers. They're not pushing to be there.
Yeah.
As we've spoken before, if this were a different administration, they have already filed lawsuits to get in.
That's true. That's definitely true. And the fact of the matter is, they basically just kept everybody out. So kind of an interesting thing all the way around, and a little troubling all at the same time. But I was going to try to talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to try to find this one clip here if I can get it to come up.
Well, just to kind of tie this in with the last topic we just talked about, the guns, I think when Biden said that he had been in the Senate for 120 years, he was talking about wanting to end the filibuster. And that's what he's saying. He wanted to go back to the way they did it when he was in the Senate 120 years ago. And that's how I think they're going to get the gun control laws passed, is if the Republicans don't come to the table or meet us halfway, however he worded it, then we'll just get rid of the filibuster. And since we have the majority, we'll push through whatever we want. So that's why I think it's coming down the pipeline here pretty soon.
One of the things I heard on a program was that I guess Biden has always been pretty good buddies with
Mitch
McConnell. And Mitch McConnell has said to Biden, in the event you're going to, get rid of the filibuster, don't think we're going to approve anything going forward. I think he made some pretty, assertive statement about that. Like he would not direct in any way his constituents to go forward with anything that they wanted passed in the event they got rid of the filibuster, just to kind of tell Joe, I guess, nothing that you want to accomplish in your administration, you're going to accomplish if we can prevent it.
But
In the
that's
event
what-
you do that.
I thought getting rid of the filibuster meant they don't need any Republicans. It's just the simple majority. They don't have to have like the.
That's what I thought too. That's why I
66%.
didn't really see how
Yeah.
that was if that was an empty threat or what that
That's-
was.
But it's
And maybe I'm understanding it wrong, but to me that seems like Mitch McConnell just talking.
it's
tough
so
to-
short-sighted though. If you go back to, your Article 1 judges, where the Democrats, I think it was in Harry Reid's days, used the nuclear option and went to a simple majority.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, Republicans doubled down and then said, oh, well, then for a Supreme Court justice, we'll just go ahead and do a simple majority too, since you already used that for Article 1 judges. So now you have Democrats going back saying, okay, if we can't get all this stuff passed in the way that we've always agreed to do it, now not always, because back in the day it was a little bit different, but for the last, 20, 30 years
Yeah,
or more,
right.
this
Yeah.
is the way we've agreed to do it because this is how this country should be run. This is the decorum we should use. We should not have a simple majority.
I think that's the politics of it, right?
Yeah, and now you have, potentially now the administration and the Democrats may say, well, let's just, again, use the nuclear option for this. Okay, what's that mean moving forward? So if we go back to a Republican-led House and Senate, you're going to be okay with them just running through everything they want under the same, same voting procedure? I don't think so.
Yeah,
So
I think
they'll be
that's
short-sighted.
I think that's the politics part of it that maybe the founders always had in mind. There's always going to be these, facts and reality, and they're going to have to deal with those in terms of what does the future look like. But then there's going to be the political part, the relationship part, where if you burn me here, I'm going to burn you later, which might be good, right? To kind of keep that checks and balances between different party lines and maybe even different.
I just thought he ran on being the great uniter
He's
and that he
united,
was going to
yeah.
bring the parties together. Seriously, though,
That's what I
wasn't that
heard.
his mantra?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
without
definitely.
I'm
question,
going to
that
bring
was his
everybody
mantra,
together.
yeah.
We're going to build a consensus, and that's how we're going to get legislation through. And so far, there's been zero consensus.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of consensus by anybody, to your point, other than it seems like it's only consensus if you see it the way
Yeah.
that they see it, which is not.
Yeah, consensus is
Technically a
not I get
consensus.
everything I want. Consensus is we got to meet in the middle on some of these. It just doesn't work any other way.
I know. It's
And especially with such a polarized country.
consistent with what we promised the American people. And in order to do that, in a 50-50 Senate, we've got to get to the place where I get 50 votes so that the Vice President of the United States can break the tie, or I get 51 votes without her. And so I'm going to say something outrageous. I have never been particularly poor at calculating how to get things done in the United States Senate. So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done. And if we have to, if there's complete lockdown and chaos,
Whoa.
What just happened?
the filibuster, then
I don't know.
beyond what I'm talking about.
I mean, that was one of many instances of just a mental meltdown yesterday.
Just completely lost what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Completely.
And outside of all of the mistakes, when you could maybe accidentally say you'd been in the Senate for 120 years and just get your numbers, messed up when you're in the middle of an ad lib. But although I don't know.
What do you
if
think he
this
had
was ad lib.
dyslexia? Maybe he was there for 210 years?
I don't know. But some of the other things, and you can't see the video for those that are listening, but I'm sure you saw it yesterday or you can YouTube it. It's just, he's got this look in his eye like, where am I? And why am I here? And what's going on? And are we having pizza tonight?
That was
And
one
I
of
mean,
my
it's just-
favorites back during the primaries, and there'd be like 24 of them or whatever up there on stage. Everybody else was wanting to talk, and they were going over their time, and the moderator would have to tell them to wrap it up.
I've said
Joe
too much.
Biden would, yeah, he'd be like,
I've said too
my
much.
time's up, right? I'm done.
It
He's like,
remind-
"Oh, I see my time's up. I'll just cut myself off right there."
Remember Saturday Night Live years ago did that for the old Bush, Bush #1, because he was in one of those debates and he'd go, "Well, thank you, and I am done." He'd be like, "Well, but Mr. Bush, you have another 25 seconds to go." And I said, "What was his line?" He had like that one thing he always said that everybody joked around about, something of lights, points of light.
Yeah,
Points
like
of light,
a
1,000 points of light.
Yes.
And he just kept saying that over and
1,000
over.
points of light.
And then he'd stop
And
and, he'd
thank
be
you
like,
very much.
You
My
still
time
have
is up."
another 10 seconds.
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Oh, I mean, all right. Never mind.
Anyway.
It's really bad. I just hope that for his sake, he maybe takes a turn in the better direction. I know he did have a stroke at some point, so maybe
Or
he's still
brain aneurysm.
doing some
I mean, not just
therapy
for his
to.
sake, for the country's sake, I hope he does take a
I'm-
turn in a better direction.
I'm
Yeah.
actually hoping that he is surrounded, and this makes me so nervous. I hope he's surrounded by good people, by
Me
bright
too.
people who
Yeah.
understand how things work, who understand the best way to move this country forward, because it's clear that we're going to need them during this administration more than anything.
Yeah, and I don't think that the president, for those that believe that they make all the decisions and they're constantly the ones that think out these different scenarios of issues and figure out how to handle them, that's not true. That's why they have their own cabinet, and they've got people that are great with numbers. They've got people that are great with people. They got people that understand the economy. So it's not like the president at any point with any president is making all of those decisions unilaterally. But in this case, I feel almost as if they're all making the decisions and literally giving him a piece of paper to either sign or
Did you
say.
see that video where he was signing the stack of executive orders and you can hear him say to the guy handing it to him, he's like, I don't even know what I'm signing right now. But he signs it anyway.
I know.
But that was a joke. He was just joking around when he said that.
Yeah, that was a really, that was awful.
I mean, what a
That's
funny
what I'm saying.
joke
Just
for
the whole
the,
thing is
for
like
the
awful.
president to pretend like he has dementia and doesn't know what he's signing. Like, I don't know. That gets labeled
Where's-
as a joke.
Where's
and
cancel culture?
Right.
Yeah.
What the
There's
things
that, right?
are
Yep.
fine to joke about and the things that are not, I cannot keep up with the
We should probably do a
changing
separate
standards.
episode on cancel culture, but
I would love
I
to.
won't say much more about it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel at some point we won't have a vernacular to use anymore. We'll have to just,
Yes, cancel culture is probably offensive to many people,
yes.
so we should probably stop saying it.
We should probably stop saying that too. So the next show we're going to do, we won't do any talking. We'll just all stare at each other and we'll run the intro. Well, we can't run the intro because there's some,
There's words in that.
words in that. So it's not going to be a very exciting show. I just wanna
But it will
throw
be
that out there.
inclusive.
Probably won't be able to turn the video on because there's people
Mm-mm.
who don't have TVs.
No, I mean,
We'll turn our video off.
it is becoming
You'll see a
nearly
black screen.
nearly impossible to know what you can and can't say or do these days. But let's look at it in a positive light and know that we've got April coming ahead. April Fools. Well, I mean, we're not fooling about those episodes, though. They're going to be great episodes. I do love April Fool's Day, though. I'm always a fan of trying to come up with something.
Something fun.
Yeah. But these episodes are going to be great. We're super excited about that and bringing these new people on, but especially just kind of diving into some what I believe to be incredibly interesting topics. So hopefully everybody else thinks that way too. That would be great.
Certainly, we're gonna put some commercials out and some just little clips out about what we're going to be doing, who we're going to be talking to, when to expect those episodes. Those should be coming out in the next week or two.
Yeah, we'll have those out for everybody to listen to and check out, put on your calendar. Again, we are on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Buzzsprout, the website, the whole 9 yards. There's lots of places to find us. Verbal sent me something the other day that we apparently have been showing up a lot on their radar. I don't know what that means, but maybe that means they're going to cancel it, or maybe they think it's terrible. I'm not sure. But either way, we are easily found. Please send your comments, your suggestions, either on our Facebook page or our YouTube page. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. We're still cranking away, trying to get some subscribers there. Obviously, the content's been a little low lately because I moved, and now I'm in a home, so we can get back at it. That's why we're back in the
No
saddle
longer
today.
living like a vagabond.
A gypsy, if you will. So, Kelsey, thanks for coming on again today. We've got to get you into the intro.
And we need a handle.
Yeah. We need to get that done in April.
Yep.
That should be part of the newsletter,
We'll
perhaps.
do that on April 1st.
Maybe in the newsletter we say, reply to the email with a potential handle for Kelsey.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
You like that?
I like that.
All right. Well, this is Shake and Bake, and thanks for listening. We appreciate you, and have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon on the SOL